China's Tang Dynasty was a world of splendor, poetry, and power. But behind the painted walls of its palaces, a shadow moved. A woman who would claw her way to the dragon throne through murder, deceit, and betrayal. She was Wu Zetian, the concubine who defied tradition, the empress who killed without hesitation, the only woman in China's long imperial history to rule as emperor in her own name. But her rise was not a story of gentle ambition. It was paved with strangled infants, rivals accused of impossible crimes, ministers executed in public squares, and even her own sons humiliated and discarded. The question is simple, yet chilling. How far can someone go for absolute power? Stay with me until the end of this video, because Wu Zetian's story delivers a shocking payoff. Not only how she murdered her way to the throne, but also how history dares us to reconsider whether her bloody rise was pure cruelty or calculated survival. Imagine being one girl among hundreds, plucked from obscurity and placed inside the glittering yet suffocating walls of the Tang Imperial Palace. You are 14 years old. You have no army, no allies, no family name that matters here. What you have are two weapons, your beauty and your wits. This was Wu Zetian's beginning. She entered the service of Emperor Taizong, one of the most powerful men on earth, a ruler whose armies had expanded the borders of China and whose court brimmed with poets, generals, and schemers. Wu should have been insignificant, a footnote among the countless women who lived and died behind silk curtains, never to be remembered. But Wu was not like the others. She studied Taizong carefully. She learned his moods, his preferences, the subtle language of his eyes when he was pleased and when he was disappointed. While other concubines competed with one another for fleeting affection, Wu watched the men in Taizong's court. She listened to conversations about power, memorized strategies of war, and absorbed the art of survival in a world where one wrong word could end a life. Even as a teenager, Wu was already playing a game of politics that would take others decades to master. She was thinking not about the next gift, the next glance, or the next night in the emperor's chambers. She was thinking 3 moves ahead, and yet, fate dealt her a cruel hand. When Emperor Taizong died, the laws of the palace descended on her like a sentence. Concubines of a dead emperor could not remarry. They could not return to their families. They were sent to Buddhist convents, their heads shaved, their youth wasted in endless prayers, cloistered far away from the world. For most women, it was a living death. But for Wu Zetian, exile was not the end. It was a pause. A gathering of strength, because Wu carried a secret. Even while she served the aging Taizong, another man had noticed her, younger, hungrier, and destined to inherit the dragon throne. His name was Gaozong, Taizong's son. And when Wu's hair was shorn in the convent, when the world believed her story was over, she was already waiting for the moment she would return. A return no concubine had ever dared attempt. Wu should have stayed hidden behind convent walls. That was the rule. Once a concubine, always a concubine, never to rise again. But Wu Zetian broke the unbreakable. Gaozong, now emperor, remembered her beauty and intelligence. Against all traditions, he brought her back into the palace as his consort. The court was outraged. Ministers whispered that such a woman must bring ruin. Rival concubines sneered that she would fade once Gaozong's desire cooled. But they underestimated her. Wu understood something no one else did. Desire fades, but power does not. So she began her campaign carefully, not against her rivals, not against the court, but against the one person standing directly in her way, the emperor's official wife. Now the story takes a chilling turn. At the center of the palace stood Empress Wang, the legitimate wife of Emperor Gaozong, proud of her rank and protective of her title. She despised Wu Zetian, regarding her as little more than a dangerous upstart. Wang mocked her, dismissed her, and believed her place as empress was secure. But Wang underestimated the woman who had clawed her way back from a convent. Wu was patient. She waited, calculating every step until she found a weapon more devastating than words or politics: a child. Wu gave birth to a baby girl, a daughter who should have secured her position at court. But within weeks, the infant was found lifeless. The palace reeled in horror. A royal child dead, the cries echoing through the golden halls. And then came the accusation. Wu, sobbing, pointed her finger at Empress Wang. She claimed the Empress, burning with jealousy, had entered the nursery and strangled the infant in a fit of rage. Think about the brilliance of this move. The death of a newborn was tragedy enough, but framed as murder by the emperor's own wife, it was scandal of the highest order. No one could prove otherwise. And in the suffocating air of the Tang court, suspicion alone could destroy a life. Gaozong believed Wu. Or perhaps he wanted to believe her. The emperor turned against his wife. Empress Wang was stripped of her title, dragged from her palace chambers, and thrown into prison. There she was tortured, humiliated, and finally executed. Her allies, including her once powerful family, met the same fate. The message was clear. Standing in Wu Zetian's way meant annihilation. But here lies the most chilling detail. Historians still debate whether Wu actually murdered her own child to frame Wang. If true, it means she sacrificed her own flesh and blood to eliminate a rival. Cold, ruthless, and utterly effective. From that moment forward, Wu was no longer just another concubine whispering in the shadows. She was now the Empress Consort of China, wearing the phoenix crown, seated beside the emperor himself. But this was only the first taste of blood, because the man she sat beside, the emperor himself, would soon become little more than her pawn. The Tang dynasty glittered with culture, poetry, painting, the hum of silk markets, but behind the scenes, Gaozong was faltering. Plagued by strokes and poor health, he relied more and more on his ambitious wife. Wu Zetian took over the machinery of government. Ministers bowed to her, generals sought her approval, petitions were addressed directly to her desk, and those who resisted, they vanished. Executions, exiles, mysterious disappearances. One by one, the court learned that standing against Wu Zetian meant death. But Wu's brilliance matched her cruelty. She expanded the empire's influence, promoted capable officials, and even elevated scholars of lower birth, winning loyalty outside the old aristocracy. Still, Gaozong remained the emperor in name. Wu needed him, for now. But she was already planning what would come after his death, and those plans included eliminating her own flesh and blood. Wu Zetian's story is only halfway done, and the darkest chapters are still to come. If you're fascinated by tales of murder, betrayal, and power like this one, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into history's most ruthless rulers. Now, let's return, because the bloodshed is about to escalate. When Emperor Gaozong finally died, the empire braced itself for a familiar ritual. The throne would pass to one of Wu Zetian's sons. She, like countless empress dowagers before her, would retire to the shadows of the court, wielding influence quietly from behind a curtain. That was the expectation. That was tradition. But Wu Zetian had spent her entire life breaking tradition. At first, she allowed her sons to take the throne. It seemed ordinary enough, a smooth succession. But one by one, those sons discovered something dangerous. Their mother had no intention of stepping aside. When one son began asserting independence, she forced him to abdicate. When another plotted against her authority, he was exiled. Still others met far darker fates, dying mysteriously, their deaths whispered about in corridors heavy with incense and fear. Her sons were not heirs. They were pawns, pieces she placed and removed at will, sacrificed for the survival of her greater plan. And it was not only her family who suffered. Ministers who dared to question her power were silenced in ways designed to break the spirit of the court. Some were dragged into public squares, mutilated, their executions staged as grotesque warnings. Families of dissenters were exterminated, not just the men, but women and children, erasing entire bloodlines. Wu's government became a theater of terror, policed by spies and secret enforcers who lurked in every shadow. No one was safe. Not generals, not scholars, not even members of the imperial clan. Loyalty to Wu Zetian was the only protection, and even that was never guaranteed. And then, in a move that stunned the empire, Wu shattered the last barrier left. She refused to rule as an empress dowager behind a screen, allowing her son to act as the symbolic ruler. No, she declared herself emperor. Not empress, in the traditional sense, but emperor, the son of heaven. With this act, she founded her own dynasty, the Zhou, placing herself as the sole sovereign of China. Picture it, a woman seated upon the dragon throne, commanding the Middle Kingdom, her banners flying not as consort, not as regent, but as supreme emperor. History had never seen anything like it. But the real question was not how she claimed the throne. The real question was this: how would she hold it once she had it? Because her reign would test the limits of both vision and terror. For 15 years, Wu Zetian ruled not as a widow, not as a regent, but as emperor, the only woman in China's 4,000 years of imperial history to seize that title. Her reign was dazzling in its scope. Wu expanded China's borders with a mixture of sharp diplomacy and calculated warfare, pushing influence deep into Central Asia. She understood that power was not only held through armies, but also through belief. To this end, she elevated Buddhism, constructing towering temples and commissioning sacred texts that cast her as a semi-divine ruler, chosen by fate itself to sit upon the dragon throne. She reshaped government too. For centuries, China's bureaucracy had been dominated by aristocratic families, but Wu promoted men of talent over noble birth. Scholars of humble origins found themselves rising to the highest offices, bound to her by gratitude and loyalty. This earned her a new class of supporters, creating a foundation of power that had never existed before. Yet for every stroke of brilliance, there was a shadow of terror. Wu's court was not a place of comfort, but a place of fear. Torture chambers operated day and night, their cries muffled behind thick walls. Accusations of treason or conspiracy, sometimes invented, sometimes real, led to executions that wiped out entire families. Bloodlines vanished overnight, erased to prevent any spark of revenge. Dissent was impossible. Ministers bowed not out of respect, but out of survival. Generals pledged loyalty while their hands trembled. Even within the palace, servants walked on eggshells, knowing that a misplaced glance could mean death. She became two figures at once. To some, the Dragon Empress, a visionary who strengthened China and opened doors for the talented. To others, the Lady Macbeth of China, a woman drenched in blood, who clawed her way to the top through deceit and murder. And yet, even Wu Zetian could not rule forever. In 705, her body failing, ministers moved to restore the Tang Dynasty. Her Zhou dynasty was erased on paper, her name struck from records, her monuments defaced. But her shadow proved impossible to erase, because the memory of Wu Zetian, the concubine who rose to emperor, still lingered, too dark, too powerful, too unprecedented to be forgotten. So how should we remember Wu Zetian? Was she a monster? A woman who murdered her own child, slaughtered rivals, and turned her dynasty into a theater of fear? Or was she a survivor? A woman in a world where men ruled absolutely, who did what she had to do to seize power in a system designed to keep her powerless? Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. Wu Zetian was ruthless, but she was also brilliant. She carved her name into history not as an empress consort, not as an empress dowager, but as emperor, a title no other woman in China ever claimed. And her story asks us a question that still chills the blood. When history remembers power, does it ever care about mercy? If you found this story as haunting as I did, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another tale of history's darkest scandals and betrayals. And when you're done, don't stop here. Click on the next video on your screen, where we uncover another shocking story from history's blood-soaked past. Because if Wu Zetian teaches us anything, it's that the shadows of power are never far from the throne.